Welcome back. In this lesson, we are going to be writing some JavaScript. So I hope you had an opportunity to try that alert out in your console. One of the things with the console, which is really neat, and you're probably wondering, well, how does that render out JavaScript code? And this kind of goes into how JavaScript works. So the way that JavaScript works, so it's a dynamic programming language, and when it's applied to an HTML document, such as index.html, it provides the ability to create some interactivity, so dynamic interactivity on your website. So what happened here is that we were using the alert object. So this is a predefined function or method, and of course we are going to be covering these in more detail. So what it is, it's a contained kind of unit that already has a preset number of commands, and once you invoke that, what happens is that the browsers will understand what alert is because they've got JavaScript written within the browser and they know how to render that out. So what it does is it reads this code and simply runs the code. So it's the same thing that if I had an alert here within JavaScript and I typed hello, so if I did the same thing over here, this time when I refresh the page and refresh index.html, boom, there we go, there's our message, hello. And that goes into how you write JavaScript. So you have a number of ways to write JavaScript, and also if you notice that this is a file that's simply sitting on my computer. So I'm not running a server, it's not uploaded anywhere, it's simply running directly from the file path where it's sitting on my computer. And that's the file that I've got opened over here. And the way that it works is all you need to do is open up an HTML file within your browser and it can render out that JavaScript. So it does need the HTML in order to render out the JavaScript. So keep that in mind because you also have the option, and I'm sure you've seen that before, where we've got JS files. Those JS files won't render out within the browser without an HTML container. So you do need that HTML container. So let's open up our HTML code and take a closer look at what are our options for writing JavaScript. And right now we have some plain. This is just a really plain template. So I've got my HTML, opening, closing head, opening and closing body, and closing HTML. And then within here, I've got a title that just says JavaScript. So it's kind of irrelevant, all of this other stuff here. This is just a simple HTML document. And that's all you need to get started and connect JavaScript to it. So there are a number of options with JavaScript, and you see I've got this nice div here that says JavaScript, of course, and we've got a button. And with buttons, if you're familiar with HTML, you might have seen that you can add in attributes. So I could do something like onClick. And what onClick will do is this gives us the ability to add an event listener. So what happens now is whenever we click the button, that something happens. So let me actually get rid of this alert because we don't need that. And let's refresh and we click it. But we haven't given it any JavaScript to render out. And this onClick attribute here within the HTML element is actually going to give us the ability to render that JavaScript out. So let's create some script. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our friendly favorite alert. And you often see times that this is the main introduction to JavaScript and these alerts, but you don't really use them much in coding. So I am going to cover it briefly just as an introduction, a very easy one to have something happen that's visual, and that's why it's used typically. But within the coding of JavaScript, you're not going to use it very much. So that's just a little bit of a tip there. So now we've got our button, so button type attribute is still there. We've got onClick, alert, JavaScript, and we've got our JavaScript there. So let's see what happens. So refresh the page. Nothing has happened yet, and that's because it's waiting for that interaction. And that's what JavaScript does. It gives you the user the ability to interact with your web page. So it makes it come to life and gives you the ability to say, okay, well, here's a button or what looks like a button, and let me click that. And wow, we can see something happened. It said hello to me. And this is the beginnings of JavaScript. Now, when you are typing JavaScript, of course, you can do it this way, but this way really isn't the best way to apply JavaScript to your elements and to your page. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to show you other ways of connecting your JavaScript to your web page. So another way to connect JavaScript, and we already did that down here before, is that we've got the script tag. So this is just, looks like HTML, and of course you can connect out your script tag and you can add in your JavaScript here. So we've already seen this, but just to kind of repeat. And what brackets does is it gives you a little bit more information about all these methods, because there are a lot of different built-in methods. So display an alert dialog with the specified content and an OK button. So that's what alert does. So basically it tells you what alert does. And we can write our JavaScript in here, refresh it, and it renders it out. Now, the other thing about JavaScript is you can place it in a number of spots. So sometimes you're going to find JavaScript placed here at the top of the page. So it's the same script tag. And let me make this, get rid of some of this white space here. So this is that same script tag that is sitting within the head section, and refresh. And wow, we've got our JavaScript rendering out as well. Probably wondering, well, what happens if I place JavaScript in both? So now we need to distinguish between them. So we've got hello 1 and hello 2. And first, hello 1 runs. And you can also notice that there's nothing built on the web page yet. And that's because hello, until you've hit OK, it won't continue past the script. And that's an important thing to note about JavaScript. And without getting into too much detail for now, it's just important to understand the way that the browser is rendering out this web page content. It's coming in from the top. And then when it hits the JavaScript, it says, oh, there's some JavaScript here. I'm going to render this out hello 1. And it doesn't continue to output any of this, even though it's aware of some of this stuff here down below. It doesn't continue to output it until you've taken the action and added in what you want to do with this JavaScript. So once you hit hello, then it continues to render this out, and we see that it goes through body and it goes through script here, and it sees, oh, there's another alert before I render out that content, and this is more JavaScript that I need to take care of. So once this hits OK, then it finally displays the content. So keep that in mind, and it's not exactly in sync with what happened with the HTML, because if it was rendering out the HTML and the JavaScript at the same time, then we would have seen the content being output. So what it does is it runs through, does the JavaScript, and then it finishes with the HTML. So that's why it's important that when you are writing your JavaScript, if you are interacting with your HTML, make sure your HTML has loaded, because you don't want to try to interact with any of your HTML elements. And of course, if you're doing an attribute on click, you're fine with doing it because it's going to render it out when it renders out that element. But typically when we're writing JavaScript, we need to make sure that all of the HTML has rendered out, and I am going to show you that in the upcoming lesson. So there's one other way before we wrap this lesson up, and to write JavaScript. And just a quick note that where you place it within the head, or the body. So with JavaScript that I'm usually writing, I place it within the body because I want it to render out as much of the HTML and the content above it before it tries to write the JavaScript, render the JavaScript, in case I come into any problems, or in case I've got a lot of JavaScript and there's some type of errors in there or something like that. And also if I want to interact with the DOM, I usually place my JavaScript at the bottom is what I'm trying to say. And that's right before the body tag, before the closing tag. But you can also place it in the top as well. So that's a matter of preference. So one of the last ways to bring JavaScript in, and and you can also bring it in as many times as you want, so keep that in mind as well. So we can link it to a file. So all we need to do is specify the source. Source is within the attribute, and the source, I don't have one yet, so I'll call it script.js, close that off. So nothing actually goes between the tags here, and it's the same as the script tags here, except we've specified a source. So let's create that source file. We're going to place our alert in there. And also keep in mind, you don't need the script tags anymore because this isn't HTML anymore. This is how you create a JS file. So I've got my index file there, index.html, and now I've got my script.js. And just to show you that this one is working, let's make this one different. So that's going to be alert 3. So let's refresh the page. Surprise, surprise, there we go. We've got our message because we've linked to our JavaScript. There's hello number 3 being popped up. So now it's up to you. So I know I've gone in through quite a bunch of different ways to attach JavaScript into your page, and I do want you to try these out for yourself and get familiar with them. So first of all, try out within the element, and you can do the on click, and then within the on click, then you can just do whatever function. And there is one important note here that we do need to keep in mind, that this method, because we've got double quotes for the attribute values, you need to use single quotes in here. Because if you use double quotes, you're going to break out of that function, and then it's going to cause a problem. So always keep that in mind, and this does get a little bit tricky when you've got the double quotes, the single quotes, and it could just as well be single quotes and double quotes. You could mix and match them, but as long as you're opening and closing with the same one, you're ready to go. So bring in JavaScript, add it into as a script tag, try out the alert as a script tag, and then lastly, create your script.js file and try it out there as well. And coming up next, I promise you, we're going to get into some more interesting JavaScript than these alerts. So we're going to be dropping the alerts and moving along into something more interesting. So that's all to come.